Mr. Gallegos?
Hi, Madam Mayor, City Council. My name is Alon Gallegos, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm here today to discuss two ADU permits obtained on 2924 and 2919 Arriba Way that were illegally obtained and will compromise safety for its neighbors. First, I want to take a moment to thank those who have been engaged, including City Council, elected officials, as well as city employees. This engagement has allowed one to see firsthand these fraudulent applications and permits for what they are: an attack on our laws and a disregard for safety to others. So those who have reached out or have looked over material related to these issues, I thank you. Since the last time I stood here in early December, we continue to witness blatant disregard for the rule of law. Building officials have announced that the owner has violated stop work orders and orders to use standard erosion control measures to protect our hillside during these storms. This is just another appalling, defiant act by the owner, even while his actions are being watched closely by neighbors and the city building department. As you are aware, to knowingly submit a fraudulent building permit application is a serious matter, the approval of which is subject to revocation by the building official whenever the permit is issued in reliance on incorrect information or in violation of any ordinance or regulation or any of the provisions of the codes. This can be found in UBC Chapter 15, Section 105.9, under suspension and revocation. The facts are clear that revocation is the only path forward. I urge all City Council members to take some time to understand this complex issue that snubs our existing regulations and procedures. What is occurring on Arriba Way in this district could happen within any of your districts in the future, and how we proceed will provide useful guidance in protecting our communities. This particular issue can be resolved in short order, but not without council holding other officials accountable in executing the revocation process. Thank you.
Jeffrey, come on up.
Mayor Murillo and City Council, thank you for your time today. I'm Jeffrey Dorenbos. I live at 2916 Arriba Way between two ADUs being proposed up on 2919 and 2924 Arriba Way in Mission Canyon. I recently sent an email detailing a few newly discovered design elements overlooked on the plans with these two ADUs and demonstrating how they dramatically elevate the risk and safety, which could result in fatalities in the worst case scenario on our property at 2916. Based on several misrepresentations in the plans and the applications, the city imposed a stop work order on the general contractor, owner, and builder of both ADUs on December 10th. On December 14th, the Santa Barbara Superior Court placed a temporary restraining order. And as the city discovered following those two things, work continued on a regular basis in defiance of the stop work order. And so on January 8th, they issued another order to stop work on both ADU projects. After that date, there has been more evidence that work has continued. This kind of defiance is not just a defiance against two stop work orders from the city or of the court. It is the act of thumbing one's nose at the city, its elected officials, the legacy of a neighborhood, its neighbors, and public safety. I have recently discovered that the city's policy to impose a $100 per day fine on such defiance. For a building project that might cost in the six figures, $100 a day is virtually meaningless and will not prevent the defiance from happening in this cul-de-sac nor any other neighborhood street of this city. However, I have recently discovered that for other violations, including parking in one's own driveway within the front yard setback, fines can go up from $100 a day to higher fines based on the city's discretion following multiple offenses. It would seem to me that if that's the case for a violation of parking in one's driveway, fines can certainly be increased for defying a legal order of the city and the court. I would like to encourage the city to adopt a daily fine that would add teeth to deter one with the deepest of pockets from defying a stop work order or temporary restraining order in order to truly protect not only the public safety of this city, but also the integrity of those officials elected or otherwise. In addition, the fact that someone who does this repeatedly has the right to continue to apply for permits to build is disturbing to me. If a driver is stopped too many times for speeding or drunk driving, that driver loses the privilege to drive. I think the same should apply to general contractors who repeatedly demonstrate an inability to follow the standards set by the city and the court. They should no longer be allowed to build. A license is a privilege, not a right. Furthermore, an individual's right to build should never outweigh the community's right to safety, harmony, and compatibility. I am asking that the city encourage the building department to revoke not only the current plans, but the applications on the ADUs at 2919 and 2924 Arriba Way. Thank you for your time and your consideration in this matter.
Michael Corrigan, you're our final speaker.
I have a question, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Dominguez has a question for...
Actually, for our city attorney.
Okay.
I just want to find out if the city attorney's office is seized of this issue and what the status is at this point. Sounds like there's some court involved potentially. And
yes,
Mr.
thank
Colon.
you, Councilmember Dominguez. We filed a criminal action a couple of Fridays ago for violation of the stop work order. That's very unusual for us to do. Our investigator has been gathering evidence, and we'll proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Dominguez.
thank you.
Mr. Corrigan? Reverend Corrigan, is that more appropriate?
Either way is fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. My neighbors have spoken eloquently about the justification for these ADU permits to be revoked and of the importance that permit violations, where and when they occur, impose meaningful penalties and be consistently enforced, particularly when staff has concluded that more than innocent mistakes are involved. Stories like ours and so many others that involve property owners like the notorious Dario Pini speak to the consequences when city officials are left powerless. There are other issues here, though, too. Specifically, I'm concerned by the repeated evidence we've witnessed where building officials have extended their administrative authority to interpret the law to the point where the internal rules that they've set may actually indeed violate the law. A good example of this is the document that the city required Mr. Petronic, the owner of both of these ADUs, to sign under penalty of perjury that required him to state that he currently resided at his principal residence at both of the two locations. How could that be true? Yet both were countersigned by city officials who must have knowingly been contributing to Mr. Petronic's perjury. This could only happen because, despite the very clear statement in Title 28 that requires the property owner to occupy the property as their primary residence, city officials, for some reason, made their own determination that as long as someone might occupy it eventually, that was good enough. This is not an exaggeration. We have it in writing from City Planner Brenda Belts. If the law had actually provided for this option, why didn't the form letter that you created provide for that? There will always be points along the way where people doing the work have to interpret the law. This necessity doesn't mean, though, that they have the authority to change it where they see fit. I hope the City Council will learn from this experience, and I urge you, as my neighbors have, to insist that these permits be revoked now. Thank you.
Thank you. That closes public comment. We'll go to the consent calendar. Oh, Ms. Sneddon.
I have a question for staff. So what would be the process for revoking permits, or what would be the next step for residents to take?
Mr. Colon?
Well, the residents have filed their own lawsuit, and so they're well advised and well represented in that. Our criminal action is a beginning, not an end. We have a lot to investigate. For the City Council, should the building official determine that permit revocation is appropriate, that will run up through the appeal process involving your Board of Permit Appeals that's established under the Uniform Codes.
if this was a project that was prior to our ordinance, would the appeal go through a different process?
I don't know. I'll have to think about that one, Councilmember Sneddon. I would say this, though, as hard as it might seem when we have very frustrating facts. We've had in the last 2-3 weeks a couple of instances of people asking for forgiveness rather than permission. And that's extremely frustrating. For the public that are here, I want to remind them that this city council has really told us to build accountability into the system, and you've done it with money. Number one, you've funded a full-time prosecutor that we're in the process of hiring. Number two, you've funded and we've hired a full-time city attorney investigator who is able to go out in the field and gather evidence in a professional way that's different than the way the planning department might view a problem. So I say that because when something unfortunate or even horrible or scary and dangerous happens in a neighborhood, people naturally come in, and they should have the context of this council having taken a lot of action and put a lot of money where your mouths are collectively to direct more reliable enforcement. And we will deliver that when I have the staff hiring completed.
If maybe we could follow up on what the process would be for applying for a revoked permit. We don't have to do that now. It's not agendized.
Yeah,
But perhaps.
Councilmember Sneddon, I can't answer that. There is not a process for a member of the public to apply for a revocation. The building official can investigate that, and if necessary, go through the due process that has to happen before you can make that revocation happen.
So it goes through the building.
Correct.
Okay.
So if the building official believes it should be revoked, he has the authority to do that, and then it follows that appeal track.
Thank you.
We'll close public comment now.